Welcome to the deep dive. We're constantly swimming in information, and today we're going to try and cut through some of that noise.
Hmm.
We're tackling something pretty heavy. The serious health impacts of abusive behavior, especially in these high-pressure worlds like the entertainment industry.
Yeah, it's a critical conversation to have.
And look, what brings this into focus right now are the extensive allegations around Sean Diddy Combs. His name's been everywhere.
It really has. Over 70 civil suits, federal charges.
Right. Things like racketeering, sex trafficking. Now, it's important context. He was acquitted on the most severe federal charges.
Yes, that's true.
But he was convicted on 2 counts of transportation for prostitution. So there's definitely a documented history there of troubling conduct.
A pattern, certainly.
So our mission today, just to be clear, isn't about judging those specific cases in court.
No, that's not our role.
Instead, we want to understand the health side, the physical, the mental, the emotional fallout that this kind of alleged behavior can cause for people. We're using general knowledge on abuse impacts here.
Looking at the mechanics of it, really.
Yeah.
Power dynamics, abusive tactics, how they damage health.
Exactly. So maybe, for you listening, start thinking, what really stands out to you when you think about the hidden costs of power imbalances, maybe in any field?
That's a good question to keep in mind.
Okay, so let's start with the physical side. It's often what people think of first, right? The visible scars. Can you sort of unpack how physical assault or even being forced into traumatic situations leaves those immediate and maybe longer-term physical marks?
Absolutely. Well, with direct physical violence, the effects are immediate and can be quite severe. We're talking tangible injuries, bruises, broken bones, head trauma, things that need medical help right away.
Yeah.
There was that specific allegation, for instance, in one lawsuit claiming Combs threw a glass, dragged someone by the hair. Those aren't just momentary pains. They take time to heal.
Right, and probably leave more than just physical scars.
Exactly. And beyond those acute injuries, the constant stress on the body from living through that kind of trauma, it ramps up the risk for chronic conditions down the line.
Like what kind of conditions?
Things like persistent migraines, fibromyalgia, even serious cardiovascular problems.
Right.
The body keeps score,
That's powerful. It's not just the event, it's the echo afterwards. That sustained stress, does it create a kind of, like, always being on edge, physically?
Precisely. That's hypervigilance. Your body stays stuck in that fight or flight mode. And over time, that just depletes your resources, impacts, well, pretty much every system.
Okay. Now, besides direct physical violence, there's another angle that comes up in these allegations, the use of drugs to control people.
Yes, that's a really disturbing and insidious aspect. These allegations about using narcotics to manipulate people, references to freak-offs.
Right.
The physical health risks there are enormous. Coerced drug use, even just once, carries the risk of immediate overdose. And if it's ongoing, you're looking at addiction, serious organ damage, liver, kidneys, plus a higher risk of infections.
And specific drugs were mentioned, weren't they?
Yeah, things like ecstasy, cocaine, GHB, which is sometimes known as a date rape drug.
Uh-huh.
These substances mess with your brain chemistry, can cause heart palpitations. The potential for long-term, really difficult health complications is huge.
Okay, so moving from the, let's say, more visible physical effects, what about the mental health toll? It feels like that could be even more profound, maybe longer lasting.
Oh, absolutely. The mental health impacts are often incredibly deep and can persist for, years, decades even. They can really change the course of someone's life.
How does that manifest? Things like PTSD.
Definitely PTSD, also severe anxiety, depression. It's very common for victims. There was that one lawsuit, a really stark example,
Which one is that?
where the victim claimed dire, long-lasting consequences mentally after an alleged rape was recorded and then shown to other people.
Oh, God, the humiliation on top of the assault.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That adds layers of trauma. It triggers things like flashbacks, constantly feeling unsafe, that hypervigilance, again, intense emotional distress. It can trap you in that moment for a very, very long time.
That sounds incredibly isolating. And you mentioned something earlier, this idea of coercive control. How does that work, especially if it's not always physically violent?
Right. Coercive control is more about psychological warfare, really. It's a pattern. Manipulation, intimidation, trying to dominate someone's life.
How so? Like, what kind of tactics?
We see allegations of, threats, controlling finances, manipulating someone's career, especially potent in industries like entertainment. This kind of emotional abuse just chips away at a victim's sense of self-worth, their autonomy. They start questioning their own reality, their judgment.
So it messes with your head completely.
Totally. And over time, this can lead to what's called complex PTSD. It's a bit different from standard PTSD.
How is it different?
It often involves deep feelings of shame, guilt, feeling worthless, and a real profound difficulty in trusting anyone.
Which must make relationships, work, everything so much harder.
Exactly. It sabotages their ability to form healthy connections, to succeed professionally. It just ripples outwards.
So these invisible wounds, the mental and emotional ones, they seem to lead directly to another devastating impact: isolation.
Yes, absolutely. Victims often feel incredibly alone, especially when you factor in things like allegedly non-disclosure agreements, NDAs, or direct threats used to keep people quiet.
Right, the NDAs ago.
That forced silence creates intense loneliness. It cuts off social support, which is so critical for resilience, for healing.
Yeah.
There was one plaintiff who described being, quote, frozen out of the music industry, just shut out after refusing certain demands. That's huge emotional and professional harm.
And I guess that risk, being frozen out, is massively amplified when you're dealing with the kind of power dynamics in entertainment, right?
Yeah, precisely. Figures like Combs, people who hold so much sway over careers, over opportunities,
Yeah.
they can make those threats feel incredibly real.
The fear must be paralyzing.
Absolutely. The fear of retaliation, of being blacklisted, which we see alleged in multiple suits, it stops people from speaking out, from getting help.
So it just continues.
It creates this vicious cycle of silence and suffering. It damages emotional health further and just slams the door on chances for recovery or justice.
Yeah.
It's a really chilling effect of that power imbalance.
Okay, let's widen the view a bit now. Beyond these individual awful experiences, what about the broader, maybe systemic issues in environments like the music industry? Are there wider patterns?
Yes, definitely. We hear reports about inhumane working conditions that go beyond specific abuse allegations and point to a more toxic culture overall.
Like what?
Well, think about Combs' reality show, Making the Band. Former participants described things like 48-hour rehearsals with no breaks, just grueling demands.
48 hours? That's insane.
It led to extreme physical exhaustion, mental burnout. People reported severe weight loss, dehydration, even anemia. Conditions like that contribute to this culture where abuse and exploitation almost seem normalized, like it's paying your dues or part of the grind.
Instead of seeing it as, well, abusive.
Exactly. Instead of seeing it as a violation of basic rights, basic labor standards.
And those NDAs we keep mentioning, they seem to play a big role in keeping this whole system going, don't they?
They absolutely do. Their widespread use, which comes up again and again in lawsuits, it fosters a culture of silence. It protects abusers.
How does it harm the victim's health specifically, beyond just silencing them?
Well, it directly stops them from seeking justice, sometimes even from accessing support networks or therapy if they fear legal blowback. They're trapped. And what this really highlights is that it's not just about one or two bad apples. It points to a systemic problem within the industry.
So a need for bigger changes.
A huge need for more accountability, stronger protections for artists, for employees, to actually safeguard people's health and well-being.
Okay, so given all of this, the physical, mental, social devastation, what are the steps forward? What can individuals who've been affected do? And what can the industry do to heal and hopefully prevent this?
For individuals, seeking professional help is just crucial. Therapy, especially trauma-focused approaches like CBT or EMDR,
What are those, quickly?
cognitive behavioral therapy, and eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, they're very effective for PTSD, for helping rebuild self-esteem, that sense of control.
Okay.
And also support groups, advocacy organizations, finding community, resources that can be incredibly validating and helpful.
And on the bigger scale, the industry changes.
Well, legal reforms are a big part of it. Stronger laws against workplace abuse, maybe cracking down on how NDAs are used or misused.
Right, making them less about silencing victims.
Exactly. Those are vital steps to prevent future harm, to shift the power balance a bit.
So a case like Sean Combs, how does it fit into that push for change? What role does it play?
Well, it serves as a very public and frankly stark reminder of the potential for devastating health consequences when power is abused like this.
It brings it out into the open.
It really does.
Wow.
It forces an uncomfortable conversation. And by keeping that conversation going, by raising awareness, challenging the normalization of exploitation.
And demanding accountability.
Yes, demanding real accountability across the board. That's how we move towards creating genuinely safer environments where people's health, physical, mental, emotional, is actually the priority.
It's clear from this, isn't it? The damage from abuse, especially tangled up with power, it goes so deep. It's not just physical pain, it's identity, trust, opportunity, everything.
It truly is pervasive.
And it really underscores that it's a systemic problem that needs systemic solutions. So maybe the thought to leave everyone with today is this. If power has this potential to cause such profound harm, how do we collectively transform these platforms of influence? How do we make sure they become places of real support and safety, not just for the big names, the stars, but for everyone working within them?